Can you tell me about when you and Grandpa and you decided to get married? Did he propose to you?
Yeah, he had before he went to Guam.
How did he do that? Do you remember?
I guess he just did. Sitting out in front of the dormitory. College.
Was that before or after he knew he was going into the Navy?
It was when he knew he was going to the Navy. When he before he left. So
Then he went to Guam for 18 months, and he worked on the cranes.
Right. And he played football when he was on Guam too. He was on a football team. Did you know?
No.
He played football in high school. Was one of the top football players, and he was a captain of the football team his senior year.
Oh. I didn't know
Was he
that.
fast?
What?
Was he fast? 'Cause Mark's pretty fast.
He probably was. He was pretty good size. Yeah, I think he weighed a lot more. And then he came home from he'd lost it after he's in high school, but
Did he write you letters?
lots of letters. Yeah, he was better writer than I was. I never wrote a letter after we were married. When he was around, he wrote all the letters, sent the Christmas cards, and he got on the email, and everyone wanted on his email list because he wrote such good letters.
Oh, wow.
And everyone liked his letters.
So after he was on Guam, he got moved to Hawaii.
They got moved. He was on board ship. He was aboard the Fletcher.
But you got married. He came back to Missouri and got married. Or Kansas?
Kansas.
Well,
His folks lived in Emporia, and I lived in McPherson, Kansas. And we were married. We were married in Kansas, in the Christian church in McPherson. And
where was your honeymoon?
Lake of the Ozarks.
Was it what do you remember where it was?
Yeah. It was over mostly around Osage Beach. I had been, in the summertime, I was a Girl Scout counselor for the Jefferson City Girl Scout Council over at Camp Pin Oak here on the lake. And I was a counselor.
Is it still there?
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, and it's still a camp. I don't know if the Jefferson City, there are four or six camps there that the CCC had built in the 30s. And I was at Pin Oak, and when Merle was in high school, he came to Pahitsi, which was a camp across the main channel from the Girl Scout camp, because those camps were all in the state park out of Kaiser, Missouri. And he took life-saving with the Boy Scouts. And they said when they put a camp for the Girl Scouts over here, and they set the Boy Scouts clear across the other side of the lake. And that Pahitsi is now part of the state prison. They send people that are, what do you call it?
Lincoln.
trustee type things. And they work in the state park, those trustees.
So after, when he came back and you got married, then you moved to Hawaii. How long were you in Hawaii?
9 months. I went Christmas Eve. Flew out Christmas Eve, got there Christmas Eve, and he was discharged the 1st of October the following year. So we were there just a little over 9 months.
So then you and Grandpa went back to Emporia State.
And we went back to Emporia State. And
Where did you live when you came home?
well, first we lived in a house, and we didn't live in that house too long. And then we moved to a duplex that was right across the right across the street from the campus at Emporia State. And his father was the head of the Western Union in Emporia, and he got a job with his father with Western Union and was a night telegrapher. But he didn't use a bug. They used what do you use? What do you type on?
Type keyboard.
Well, that's what he used, the keyboard.
He didn't know how to.
No.
He didn't know how to send the Morse code like Grandpa Harrison.
Mm.
So Grandpa Harrison worked for Western Union all of his.
Right.
Oh.
He had worked. Grandpa Harrison was born in 1898, and he had worked for Western Union since he was 16. And I've seen him send play-by-play basketball games on a bug. He called those his bug, because they chattered like the bugs chatter here at night. But I just can't understand how you can send a play-by-play, and he'd send it into newspapers and they could pick it up. And that's what they put in the newspaper, was what he was sending.
So after you got finished with college, is that when you moved to Kansas City, or?
No, we moved to Wichita.
That's right, you went to McPherson.
We went to Wichita, and he worked for the YMCA. And Jed was born in Emporia, and when he went to work for the YMCA, he worked nights. He worked all day, and he worked in evenings and on weekends. And I wasn't very happy, because he only saw Jed if he came home for lunch. It was the only time Jed saw him. And so he hadn't been there too long, and this insurance company from McPherson called and asked if he'd interview with them, that they'd had some recommendations for him to go to work for them. So he went to work for the insurance company, and he was an underwriter and personnel director.
And that's when you had Dad in McPherson.
I had him and Lori were both born in McPherson.
How long did you stay in McPherson?
We were in McPherson until 65. 65 we moved moved to McPherson.
And then when did you move to Kansas City?
In 65,
Oh, so when did you get sick? I mean, was that in
I-
McPherson or were you in
yeah,
Kansas City?
I
Right town.
was about probably 63. Let's see. Ron was in the first grade and Jed was in the third grade. And Lori could have started school in August, but when I got encephalitis, Lori went to Bartlesville and lived with Furla. And so but Ron went to school and told the teacher that his mother was going to go to live with Jesus, and he thought that was really would be exciting. And
When did you move to Raytown?
we built our house in '66.
And what made that move happen?
What made it happen?
Yeah, why did you move to Raytown?
Because we found a house that we liked and out in South Kansas City, or South Grandview area, and when we went back to, and Merle was working over in on the Kansas side, but he was going to move or work in, he was working in downtown Kansas City, and he was going to move, their office was going to move out to the Grandview area, so we moved to the Raytown area. That's why we moved there.
And you got a job at, is it Laurel Hills? Was that the first job you got when you moved there? And you worked there until you retired?
Right. Well, Laurel Hills, and I worked for the Raytown schools. I went to work for Laurel Hills and finished teaching. Went to work after Thanksgiving vacation for a teacher they'd let go that had lost control of her class. And so I went into this third grade class, and then I said if I'm going to stay in teaching, I prefer to go into PE. So I went to Eastwood Hills then as PE teacher, and I was mostly at Eastwood, and that was my home school, but I taught at 4 other schools, like just an hour a day for about 3 years. But I started at Eastwood. They had 800, I had 800 kids.
No.
And as the school got a little smaller, they sent me, like 1 year I went to Spring Valley and Eastwood, 1 year I went to Blue Ridge and Eastwood, I went to Laurel Hills and Eastwood, I went to Chapel and Eastwood. So,
And then what year did you retire?
1987. I retired in 86, and Merle was going to retire in 86 also, and then Lori was going to get married in 87. So I talked, and I when I retired, I told your mother if she'd go back to school full time, I'd keep you. So I kept you, and then I talked Merle into staying on until June of '87, and so he stayed on. He said he hated that 6 months, but he stayed on, and because Lori was married then in April.
When did you get the property down here, the lake?
1972, and we in '72, and it was that little house on the right up above the TV's what it looked like, and then Ron and Jed had a bedroom down in the basement, and Lori slept on a day bed in here in the living room, and Merle and I were in a small bedroom because half of this room was here and the basement was like it is, but then we tore all that side off and rebuilt the house and put a second floor on it.
And then what about Grandpa Juan's house?
That little house was there when we came. It was a bad cabin, and Mother and Daddy came and redecorated that and rebuilt it, and they were in it as long as they both lived. Mother died in '76, and Daddy died in '98, I think.
So, as you were raising your family, what were some of your guys' favorite things to do? As far as, like I know you like to canoe quite a bit. You went.
Canoeing was our favorite thing, and boating and fishing, and Ron always played baseball in the summer, and Lori played softball, and Jed just wanted to ski, and we always worked with the youth group and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and whatever our kids were doing with the schools.
Grandpa was an Eagle Scout.
I had 4 Eagle Scouts. Grandpa and my 2 boys and you.
And that was a big deal, I think, as far as.
That was a big deal, and it's still a big deal. And I saw the other day it was the antique auction. They had a shirt that would not have been as old as Merle's Boy Scout shirt, and that shirt, they valued it $250. I thought,
I think she has some really old Boy Scout books upstairs.
yeah. Well, did you see I've got all
No.
Merle's and the boys' things up there with their
merit badges,
merit badges
and their sashes.
up on there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where all have you been in the world? You and Grandpa. Besides Hawaii.
Been to Europe twice. Been to Canada, Nova Scotia, Alaska twice, Mexico, lots of times.
Did you go to East Berlin
Oh, yeah.
when it was still East Berlin?
Well, it was, we went in when you went in on the bus and they rolled mirrors under the bus to see if anyone was hanging on the bus.
The Russians did. Or the Americans. Was that Checkpoint Charlie?
We went through Checkpoint Charlie. They were pointing the guns at our bus. We couldn't get off the bus there at Checkpoint Charlie. And then they had us get off the bus. But a guard stood with his gun pointed towards the bus.
So did you went over to East Berlin and toured?
Yeah, on a bus. We took a bus tour. Merle wanted to walk over to East Berlin, and I said, you can walk if you want to. I'm not. I'm going to take a bus. He'd read this book, How to See Europe in some ridiculous low price in a day. And anyway, it said, yeah, just walk. You walk across Checkpoint Charlie and you walk around. How would you know where to go? And East Berlin at that time didn't have like open businesses very much. We went to a museum in Berlin, East Berlin, that where the Russians had stole all this stuff. And we saw that museum and we toured, went to a restaurant, but most of it was aboard the bus.
That must have been it. Is that when was that? Was that when you went to go see Lori?
Uh-huh. We went to Berlin before we went to Africa. We went to Europe, and Merle and I went to Berlin, and then we went back to Paris, and then we flew from Paris into Africa.
And you also, where did you go in Africa? Was it the Congo where Lori was?
We went to Central African Republic, and that it was used to be a part of the Congo, but she was in. We landed in Chad at the airport, but of course you couldn't get off. And when we went into Chad, there were guards with their guns drawn at the airplane while we landed there. When Merle and when we went in '84, when we landed in Frankfurt, Germany, there were tanks sitting out on the Carmack, so you couldn't do anything. I mean, it was still pretty restricted. And then we went back in, I think I'm not sure when we went back with Berlin Gerald, and it was relaxed a lot more when we went back the second time.
So there were still really heightened tensions in '84 in Germany.
Yeah, there were a lot of, and see that that's when it was still almost like a war zone. And in Berlin, you felt that too.
Did you go to all 50 states? Did you travel to all 50 states?
Yes, I have.
Were you with Grandpa most of the time?
part of it was with my parents. Merle did not go to all 50 states. But my parents, we took a vacation every year, and we went someplace. And my parents were high on education, so we went through a lot of factories and saw how they did things.
Nice.
Sort of like we did with your dad and our kids. Because I know he said he wanted to take his boys and his family like we had done.
We definitely went on a lot of trips.
What?
Said we definitely went on a lot of trips. You have anything interesting? Any interesting stories about that you would want to share about your life?
Okay. I grew up with two sisters. One 2 years older than I and one 7 years younger. And had a very, very good life. A very loving family. Both of my mother was the baby of 8 kids, and my dad was 5 sisters and him. So I had a lot of cousins, which I really appreciated, and I knew them all, and which was a real big difference. Merle had some cousins, but only knew of 2 of them until he was in the Navy, and then he got to know a few of his cousins in California he'd never seen in his life. And so he was raised as an only child, but had a brother that was 7 years older than him, but the brother died of heart. He had a heart problem he was born with, and Alan was 4 when he died, and Merle wasn't born for another 3 years. So he was raised as an only child. And when Jed and Courtney adopted Evan, they said, "This is it," and he said, "Don't make it it." He said, "I didn't know how much I missed by being raised as an only child," because he said until he got married and he found out what it was like to have a family.
What was it like to have all 3 of those kids running around?
A handful.
Who was the most trouble?
Your dad.
No.
Who was the smartest?
Your dad.
I don't know. Probably. It's just like kids. They all have their differences. And,
This is my last question. What was the biggest accomplishment of your maybe your life and your marriage? Do you have something that you're really proud of?
well, our 3 kids,
Yeah.
and how they all gone their separate ways and all done different things, but they're all very good in their own field. And Merle and I retired at 55 and 56, and we retired so we could do for others. And we retired thinking we'd like to do the Peace Corps. And when we got to Camdenton area, we found the lake area, we found out there was a Peace Corps right here. And, I was the head of the Lamb House for 6 years. And when I wasn't able to be the head of the Lamb House, they hired someone to take my place that I had done free gratis. And we went on all kinds of church bills and church things. We helped rebuild the black church that had been burned to the ground. We helped build in the Appalachian Mountains, we helped build a youth center for the kids. We went to Colorado and worked in and helped do some repair jobs in a children's home. Went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with the church. All of these jobs were with the church. Went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and helped rear up a black church. And there were small things where we just went for the day. When our church had a camp in Jefferson City, and I was on the council of board of directors for that for 6 years. And so we would go every once in a while and spend a weekend or a few days at camp, church camp. Just did what we could do for other people.
So when Lori went to the Peace Corps, you were pretty proud of her.
That we were. She went, she was 22 years old, went, and not knowing what she's getting into, and not only learning, she had to learn French, and then she had to learn Sango. She learned 2 languages. They sent her to London first. She went to London to learn the basic languages, and then they moved. When she first went to Africa, she lived in a African home, learning more of the language. And she also, when she was in London, they gave her a quick course on motorcycle mechanic so she could take care of her own motorcycle.
Wow. I thank you for sharing with me tonight, Grandma, and promise this